Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Healthy and Whole.
Mind, body, and soul.
My name is Leo, and this is
Shani Presley.
Good to see y'all again. Before we get started, we always do our thank yous and our support of those who have kind of helped us bring this show to you. So we want to thank the church and the congregation of the Apostolic Faith, Brooklyn 265 Lafayette Avenue, where the pastor is Pastor John Heraclio Wyatt Jr. and his beautiful wife, Sister Paulette Wyatt.
Yes.
We also want to thank their planning team and the production team for supporting this, and hopefully it's helping. Hopefully you're being blessed and helped by it. So we're going to jump right into this show tonight. We're going to talk, this is Mental Health and Wellness Month. So this is what we want to talk about. It's going to be a little different spin this month, but I think it's something that's really, really needed and something that will really be helpful.
Yes.
All right. So now the world is starting. I think is it safe to say we're opening back up now?
Yes, it is safe to say that we're opening back up. It's been a while. It's literally been, it feels like 2 years, but it's capitalizing on 3 years.
Yeah,
right?
It's at least 2.5.
Yeah.
It's at least a good 2.5 years where we've been either in complete lockdown or partial lockdown. Social distancing is still a thing. Yeah. In many places, masks are coming and going, and all of these things are still going on. But we're starting to get back to where restaurants are open and social events are happening and gatherings are happening.
Sporting
events. And we know that because it seemed like we went from 0 to 100 with our kids. It was nothing for 2 years, and the last month has been crazy.
Yes,
it's been something after another. But that's a good thing. We prayed to get back to this. So, sometimes what you pray for can be overwhelming. Yes. If I'm not so. Anyway,
let's keep going.
Let's keep going. Yeah, that's a whole nother show. But we want to talk about now that the world's opening back up. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've noticed. But the world feels crazier now than it did pre-COVID.
But I think that because we had an opportunity to die down and relax and finally internalize who we are. We haven't seen the crazy stuff in 2.5 years. So it seems so magnified. I don't think that it's crazier now. It was always like that. It's just now that we are very sensitive to it, it seems over magnified. That's what I'm thinking.
You used the perfect term. We're most sensitive to it. So the topic of this show, or the theme of this show, is going not so much on how to survive COVID lockdown isolation, but now that the world is coming back to a social gathering setting or a social interaction setting, what dynamics exist that didn't before because of that isolation, and how do we deal with it? Because I promise you, I didn't realize this until I started researching for this show, how much social isolation, social being disconnected from people physically, how much we miss and what impacts that have on us and our relationships, our interactions. And guess what? A vast majority of our mental health and well-being comes from our perception and success in our social settings.
That's correct.
So that's what we want to talk about tonight. So first thing, let's get right into these questions.
Okay. So the first question is, how have we changed socially after COVID isolation?
Okay, so here we go. Let's jump right in with this. We are, as beings, created. And yes, we are created by God, Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. They created us in their image. Yeah. But the fact that they created us in their image. God is relational.
Yes.
He created us to be relational and interactional. Some mental health or some social, what's the word I'm looking for? Like psychology text and that, or sociology text will define us as the ultimate pack animal.
I can see that.
We're the ultimate, because we really have learned to survive in an environment based on our interactions with others. Because of, even if you think down to our economy, the way we interact, you have something that I can buy, we can trade, I have a service that I can provide to you, back and forth. So that connection of social interaction is the basis of what makes us work. And other than the exterior component of that, there is a very, very in-depth, very, very impactful internal need for that type of interaction. We need it. Social interaction and social connection is not just a luxury for us. It is something that our brain, our physiology needs. There have actually been studies, which we'll hopefully talk about tonight, where people have seen that our literal physiology, the way our body works, changes when we're isolated from people, when we don't have social interaction.
You know, we can also think about our own experiences.
Yes.
Throughout this 2 years. I know for me, I kind of liked being home with my children, so I had my pack. And when I went out into society, I did notice that it was a kind of awkward interaction with people because they were like, oh, a human being.
Right.
Another human being. And it felt like you could tell that people wanted to just unload everything. Yes. Because they had so much stuff built in.
Right.
Stuff, you know what I mean?
And this is one of the reasons why social media has been a very caustic and very explosive place over 2.5 years.
About that. Yes.
Is because we've lacked that normal flow of interaction, exchange of information, exchange of opinions and ideas, exchange of emotional currency, if you will. And the only semblance we had of that was social media. So it was extra intense because people were dumping everything in there. But social media and its algorithms have a way of using what you put in to create the circle you're going to be in.
Right.
So now you're not creating a system, you're not creating a social connection that's going to hear what you say and give you something constructive back. It's going to echo and reinforce what you feel, which then just builds into this cycle. Wow. So the lack of true social interaction, the echo chamber that is social media that was inundated with all of that information we normally would have been sharing face-to-face, person-to-person in social gatherings. Now we're in this isolated place where we think, we ruminate, we go over and over all of these things that are happening in our life or going on in our life. We try to find solace in social media and we can't find it. And now all of a sudden, okay, boom, the world's back open, go be normal.
You know, someone said, I was listening to a social media person, and they said, where is the secrets? Everybody is telling everything and things that shouldn't be told on social media. Right. Like, where's your person that you can talk to? Everybody doesn't need to know what's going on in your life.
And now,
that's what social media has become for many people. Yeah.
Whereas the currency secrets are telling someone things in confidence. Yeah. That was the ultimate social currency. If I could trust you and confide in you, that made our bond a lot tighter. Yeah. Well, when you take that away for a long point with the lack of the normal social interaction, now the social currency becomes the likes, the responses, the comments on social media. So,
have you guys watched Social Dilemma? I'm not plugging in, but is it called Social Dilemma?
Yeah, the Social Dilemma.
The Social Dilemma. It really breaks down how social media has erupted in a way that can be not helpful for humankind.
Exactly, and it all came to a head at the same time. Yes. COVID and the onslaught of social media has created this, I don't want to say toxic, but this almost Molotov explosive cocktail of we're going to pull out everything that's in you and put it in a place where it's not going to be treated the way it needs to be treated.
But remember, they say computer only do what the programmer tells it to do.
Yes, and the programmers programmed it to keep you coming back.
And that's how they keep you coming back. With pulling of your emotional strength.
Exactly. I was listening to a podcast the other day. It was a Blink, actually, an audio book, and they were talking about the way social media works. And it said basically social media they don't look at their currency as dollars and cents. It's time spent on the platform.
Yeah, I can see that.
So the more they can reinforce that need to tap into their platform, they sell time, they sell your attention to advertisers.
We're the commodity.
Yes. But guess what? It creates this unhealthy side effect of us putting things out there that shouldn't be put out there for everybody, getting responses for everybody, and people that are not connected to us, and their responses reinforce or impact us. Now you put all of that together, and now we're different. Yeah. Because we are processing the world different. We don't realize how much the response we get from others dictates our social and mental well-being.
But I think about that as any person just sit down and think about themselves. How did your environment affect you? Are you thriving because you had support around you? Right. Or are you really struggling because you had people that were struggling within themselves and that couldn't handle some of their situation and dump their trauma on you.
Right.
And I wanted to go back to social media. Social media isn't always all bad.
No, it's not.
But
no, it's
there
not.
is some areas of it. If you don't timers, if you don't set boundaries, you can fall into these rabbit holes.
Yes.
And the rabbit holes can take you into places that you never thought you would ever go.
Very true.
Yes.
Very true. So, how have we changed because of COVID isolation? The way, the value, the value we place on our social interactions have changed because the nature of our social interactions have changed. We've been physically disconnected, so we connected through a digital source, which gave us something.
Yes.
But that digital source is not a direct channel; it's a manipulated channel that's now impacted us to whereas it feeds into these thoughts that can be mentally harmful, especially in the echo chamber that is social media, that one either reinforces biases because it's going to give you more of what you put out, or it reinforces things that are negative thoughts about you because now you get caught into comparison.
Right.
One of the Greek philosophers said that comparison is the killer of joy. It will destroy your joy. But that's what social media does. It either echoes what you already think, or it tells you you're not where you need to be. So now that we're coming back into the world, now we're bringing this 2.5 year, almost 3 year time span that has impacted us mentally. Our social interactions are not going to be what they were.
I just thought about habits.
Yes.
We can build habits so quickly. In 2.5 years, you solidify a new habit.
Yes.
And that habit could have been a habit that's destroying you and deteriorating you, or a habit that's growing you. Because you see all these people, multi-businesses in their hustles and all this different stuff, hustle culture. You see all of this stuff, but there's some people that were very social butterflies.
Yes.
Are now introverted.
Yeah.
And
socially isolated,
socially awkward, lonely.
Yes.
And on all these anxiety prescriptions and all those things. And they weren't like that before.
And even those people that have used this time to be quote unquote productive and started these side hustles and social media platform businesses, and are they truly socially happy, or have they bought in to what social media sold them?
Correct.
Have they bought into what social media said, hey, you can go do this? And now they're chasing a goal that
has no ending.
No ending, and that wasn't the fulfilling point of their life prior to this.
Correct.
Prior to this, people had plans, they had goals. COVID shut everything down, and now those things you scrapped for what social media told you should chase.
Yeah.
But now you're chasing something. You may be catching it. You may be balling. You may be getting the bag. But are you being fulfilled because of it? Because this was never what you really wanted. It was what you were told you needed.
I was listening to, I was on YouTube a couple weeks ago, and everybody know who Doja Cat is. And she was talking about how outside of music, she has no friends.
Right.
And how she can't be herself. And she wondered, is this something I really want to do for life? Like, you see her excitement when she performs, when she's acting silly, but internally she's not satisfied with what she's doing. And many people would think that she should be satisfied.
She should be.
She has money, she has fame, but that's not what it's all about.
And that leads me right to our two terms about what COVID did to us. There are two psychology terms that we use but we don't understand really deeply.
Okay.
And COVID has really brought this to the forefront, especially as we come out and start to resume society as normal.
Yes.
Isolation and loneliness. Now, isolation and loneliness are not the same thing. Isolation is the lack of feeling connected.
Okay.
So now you talk about Doja Cat. Doja Cat's a musician, for those of you who may not know. She world famous, entourage, well known, but she feels isolated.
Yeah.
Because there's not a true connection. So during COVID, all of us, to some extent, were isolated. Now, we might have been connected with those we were quarantining with, but that's the circle, the group that we were connected with prior to, we weren't connected with. That leads to a feeling of isolation. Here's the key. Some people, if they have 3 connections, they're perfectly fine. If those, those people are fine.
Yeah.
Some people, if their connections have to be widespread,
yes.
they have to be varied, different connections based on different spaces, different things, different
yes.
themes. Mm-hmm. That's what makes them feel connected.
Yes.
It's never the same for the same people.
Yes.
Okay? So there's no one size fits all. You are you. Mm-hmm. But isolation is the lack of feeling connected. Mm-hmm. Loneliness, which also saw this ridiculous peak during COVID when we were isolated. Mm-hmm. Loneliness is the perceived difference between what level of connection you have and the level of connection you want.
Mm. So that's internalized.
That's internalized. Yes. So now, when we're isolated, isolation is a state of being.
Yes.
Okay?
It's outside.
It's out.
External.
It's to some extent. Because Doja Cat can be around a bunch of people and still feel isolated. So it can be external and internal. But COVID was an external circumstance that made us isolated.
Yes.
But a lot of times, then it created it created a jumping off point for us to become lonely because we didn't want to be isolated, especially for the length of time that we were. Mm-hmm. Okay? So we were physically isolated. And a lot of people start to get lonely because loneliness is not just I don't feel anybody loves me. It's I want to be more connected and I'm not.
Yeah.
That's what loneliness is. The crazy thing is scientists have studied using functional MRIs and CT scans. What that means, functional MRI is basically they put you in an MRI machine and they track what part of your brain lights up as you have different thoughts. Okay. So they literally can see what part of your brain is functioning when you have a certain emotion, when you do a certain mental task. They can tell which part of the brain. The way that works is because the part of the brain that's more active will have more blood flow. So therefore it will quote unquote light up. So they can track this. CT scans do the same thing.
Yes.
They have literally seen that people who feel isolated and therefore lonely, their brain literally works differently. After that, when they begin to report that, their brain works differently in that state than it did in a prior state, or than it does in an up state following.
So now your mind is building new connections.
Your mind is different. And this is what we're getting at here.
Yes.
Coming out of COVID isolation, which made many of us feel lonely and exacerbated a lot of these sorts of feelings, our brain literally is different now.
Changed.
It's literally different.
I definitely get what you're saying now. Wow. It's definitely changed.
And if our brain is different, our interactions are different. If our interactions are different, our social health is going to be different.
Yes.
If our social health is different, that's going to impact our mental health.
Is different.
That's why we're talking about this.
Yes.
Because sometimes people will feel a certain way and don't know why.
Yes.
Right now, the world feels extra loud. It feels extra intense. The reason is we're getting back to those interactions, but our brains are different now.
And I think some people, before we went into COVID, a lot of people were watching TV.
Yes.
And all into it.
Right.
Your mind had already got used to all of the noise off the TV.
Yes.
You had to get quiet because there was really nothing on TV. And now you're trying to ramp back up into that same atmosphere.
Right.
And your mind cannot handle it.
Right.
Because it's totally different.
Right. It's totally different. Our brains are working different.
Yeah.
The way our brains govern interactions, the way we perceive verbal and nonverbal communication now, it's going through a different filter.
And you may perceive something as rude.
Oh, wait, stop. You're getting ahead of me. You're getting ahead of me. Now, let's talk about some of the research into this isolation and loneliness. Yes. Research into mechanisms behind Alzheimer's have shown that our brains actually shrink when people report being lonely. Literally, our brain shrinks in size because loneliness and social interactions, person-to-person connections stimulate our brain activity. When we're talking to people, we're listening to what they say. We're making mental images of what they're telling us. Our brain is reading their body language and interpreting it. So that's a lot of activity there. So when that activity is not there, and then we start to feel lonely, our brain literally changes its chemical balance and its chemical mechanisms and causes our brain to shrink. There's one study that reported in periods of isolation or when people report loneliness, there's a decreased amount of what is called brain-derived neurotrophic factors. Neurotrophic means nerve growth. So when our brain loses the ability to grow, that hormone directs and drives our brain growth and connections. It's crazy, I know.
I almost want to ask this question. I don't know if you can answer it. So, is there a elevated amount of people, like older people, that are being diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's since this last 2 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Again, this came out of Alzheimer's research. Not that this caused Alzheimer's.
No.
But
if you were already in the stages of it.
But even not that. If you have elderly people, because a lot of their peers are either sick and they can't be together, or their peers have passed away, they're separated from family because their kids have moved away, they're in they're in some type of institutional care setting, they begin to feel isolated and lonely. But guess what? These are healthy brains that this feeling then begins to have this impact on. This is not, hey, I have Alzheimer's. This was secondary. This was a impact of loneliness and isolation.
I can deal with the personal part of it, because I remember I told you, Daddy, my brother's dad, which is our dad, was in a nursing home.
Yes.
And my mom was working and she couldn't really get to him. I was in college, my siblings were young, and he had a stroke and his whole left side was paralyzed. And I want to say it was like 2 years he just started deteriorating. Yeah. Because he felt like he was lonely.
He was lonely and isolated.
And it wasn't long after, which is terribly sad, he passed away.
Right. And for those of you that don't know, I work in the skilled nursing facility setting. COVID has been so hard because aside from those that succumbed to the actual COVID infection, during most of this time, people have been confined, even within the building. They've been confined to their rooms because you can't have group settings because you risk passing COVID around.
Correct.
So, I know our skilled nursing facility has what they call a life enrichment department where they plan bingo and water painting classes and to give people group activities. Well, we couldn't do that during COVID. So now you have people who are separated from their families in an institution who are now separated from the people within the institution.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like being, and this is really sad to say, and this is what people miss.
Like solitary
confinement.
Yeah.
And it's the lesser of two dangers. Yeah. Because if we don't do this, you may get COVID and that may take you out. But now you've been in the room and this isolation and loneliness starts to impact you.
It's eating you up.
And your brain is changing. We saw so many of our patients literally, like you say, their mentality changes, their attitude changes, their affect changes, their level of cognition changes, and a lot of it's based on the little social interaction and loneliness kind of fighting activities that they had. Those went away. So now they're confined to a room. And then in many cases, the only people you see, they come in, they've got masks and shields and gowns.
Yeah, so you're traumatized even more.
And now, this brain-derived neurotrophic factor that I talk about is a signal molecule that directs the formation, connection, and repair of brain cells. So now if you're isolated and lonely, and that growth factor is not functioning at the highest level, guess what? The ability to learn, the ability to repair your brain and recover, all of that's going to suffer. And if your brain is suffering, everything that flows from it, which is everything, is going to suffer. All right? Next, decreased prefrontal cortex, higher order functioning. That's a whole lot of mumbo. That's a whole lot of scientific jargon. Our prefrontal cortex is the front part of your brain. It is the part of your brain that is what we call the executive function.
Yes.
It's your ability to have a response to a stimuli, but then make a conscious decision on how to react.
Okay.
It's our personality center that most texts report. It's where you come from in the function of your brain. Okay. Well, guess what? With this isolation and loneliness, it changes the way the prefrontal cortex works. So now, because it's missing out on all of the verbal cues, the physical cues, the thing that controls your personality, the things that allows you to have that higher order executive function interaction with the world is changed. Its literal makeup, chemistry, and functioning has changed because we've been isolated and many people have felt lonely.
When I said wow, I was thinking about children. Because you may have a child that's been bubbly and excitable and had this certain kind of personality that you were used to. And all of a sudden you'll say, you are not yourself. But we didn't think about that all that they experience that's really had an effect on them.
Oh, gosh.
To a point where their personality
could change.
Literally has started changing.
Yes, so many studies have documented that children that don't feel a rich social network growing before COVID, kids that feel isolated, kids that feel unsupported, kids that don't feel well connected, they show developmental issues in the personality profiles, learning abilities, memory, because especially in those developing brains. Those brains are lighting up all the time because of the interactions. When you take those interactions out, and now that brain doesn't form and function the way it's supposed to, the way we are used to, let me say that. So now we've got prefrontal, you've got decreased growth factors, you've got decreased activity in your frontal cortex, which is your higher order function, your executive function, your personality center. Now you've got smaller brain masses for learning and memory, smaller emotional centers. So now if your emotional centers are suffering, this is why the world feels so loud. Because of your higher order systems aren't functioning as well. Your ability to regulate and make conscious decisions well is not functioning because of we've been isolated and lonely for so long. Even if you weren't lonely, we've all been isolated. Yeah. We've had a decreased amount of social interaction. Yeah. So that higher order area is not functioning the way it was prior. Yeah. Our emotional center can be sometimes overreactive. Because how many times?
Today I had to check myself.
Yep.
Because I had a conversation and the way the tone came out, it I started feeling away. And I had to check myself, was like, Shawnee, was that really you feeling away? Was that person really trying to hurt you? No. You took this a little extra. Backtrack and calm it down.
But see, that is that emotional center that makes us almost hyper reactive.
Yes.
Because here's one study found that when we're socially isolated, we begin to crave social interaction, and it lights up the same part of our brain that craves food when we're hungry. Have you ever been in a grocery store when you're hungry? What do?
The buggy starts to get packed with stuff.
And most of it's not good for you.
Yeah.
So now we're back to, now we're starting to open up. Our brain's different. Our emotional centers are
Could that be why the shelves are just almost kind of empty?
Yes.
Because people are just shopping.
Shopping just to shop.
Wow.
Because we're back to that. Our brain is different. Our emotional centers are functioning a little different. We're sometimes hypervigilant, sometimes not perceptive enough, because it's just different. So now, but we're craving interaction with the world at large because we've been missing it for 2.5 years. So we're just taking in everything.
Literally taking.
We're just taking in everything, and a lot of it's not healthy for us mentally. The world, but then we take in some. We're open to everything, I should say, because now we're just looking. How can I interact with people? How can I get back into society? How can I get started again? But now we're open to everything. We get something that triggers us emotionally or affects us emotionally, that emotional center overreacts. Because now, when we'll talk about this in a minute, when you're isolated and lonely, you start to, things that you encounter after that, emotions, become magnified because you add more value to them. So if somebody makes an off-color comment to you 2.5 years ago, you'd be like, you know what, I didn't like that, but whatever. Now it becomes a whole thing because it's magnified because you've added extra value to that. It's like when you put a piece of pie in the refrigerator that you full of pie. Oh gosh, I can't eat no more, but I'm gonna come back and eat this later. And then you get ready. You the next morning or the next day you come home from work. You're, oh man, I can't wait to have my pie. And somebody ate it. That piece of pie, because you added so much value to that pie, that becomes an issue in the house.
It sounds like something I went through.
You went through this last night. Last night with your sweet little ice cream cone thing.
Yeah.
The kids ate all. Shawnee likes sweet ice cream cones, the little waffle cones. And we were at a baseball game, and the kids sat on the sidelines and ate all the cones. And she got home, and she felt some type of way. It's not. These things come from the dollar store, y'all. These aren't gourmet things.
But you know what? You're correct.
This is because of the value
of the value I added to something that I liked, and I made sure everything else was provided for them. But the one thing that I wanted, they wanted.
Yes.
But back, like you said, back in the days, I'd be like, well, they ate it. I can go back and buy some more.
Exactly.
but I wasn't angry. I was just quiet, and I was like,
So now this is why the world feels extra loud and intense right now.
People that can control their emotion still experiences this stuff.
Yes, but even now, even for those people that have good control, it's more work to control it now.
That's correct.
So this is the whole thing. The world feels different because the people in the world, because of isolation, in many cases, our brains are working differently. Our brains have to reacclimate to the open social environment.
Yeah.
Okay? So isolation has been also found in functional MRI to light up the same brain of the same part of the brain that processes physical pain. So when people feel isolated, when they are isolated and they begin to feel isolated and then lonely, the same part of the brain that tells you something's hurting you lights up. So what does that tell you? This has been 2.5 years of, for lack of a better term, mental pain. Well, what does that do? It makes you callous sometimes. It makes you less perceptive, or it makes you, I'll do anything to get out of pain. Well, again, you open yourself up to all kind of interactions. Then emotionally something happens, and now because you value it so much, it hurts worse, or it feels that it hurts worse. So now this whole cycle gets going. The world feels loud and crazy right now because we are functioning differently. People are more rash. Some people have gone to that extreme, and some people have gone to the other extreme where
they don't even want to deal with it.
I've been isolated and painful so long, I don't know how to get out of this.
Yeah.
Okay. So loneliness, when left unchecked, has been found to be more damaging to our health, not our brain health, our overall health, than smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
When left unchecked, blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, strokes, all of those things are more likely from being lonely for a long time than if you smoked 15 cigarettes a day. Because of the way our brain regulates our hormones, and it changes the way our body works.
Wow.
So we need social interaction, true social interaction. Digital interaction doesn't do it justice. And in many cases, the way we interacted was through social media, which is not a filter that conserves everything. So now,
because you need all sides.
You need all sides.
You need what you really like, and to know the things that you really don't like.
True.
You need to have those interactions and watch it and talk to people so you can know maybe what I don't like is something else.
Right.
And it maybe isn't that particular thing.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Not having both sides of the story stops you from learning. It stops you from making an educated decision. It stops you from treating people differently. But the whole theme is, right now the world is different because we're different because of this social isolation we've had for the last 2.5 years. So as we come out of it, what do we need to do? How do we try to offset these effects? That's your question. That was your cue for a question.
Okay. How does this impact social health and mental well-being?
How does this impact social health and mental well-being? I think we've kind of talked about that so far.
You told me I was just like socially not noticing the cue.
Yeah, you weren't. You weren't picking up. But that's one of the impacts. That because we have missed social isolation, because of the social isolation we've had for so long, we have sometimes our ability to respond appropriately has been blunted because of all those brain things we just talked about. Sometimes it's not blunted, it's overexpressive. We see people's emotions and we take them more, we add more to them than we magnify them is the word I'm looking for.
I'm just sorry for cutting you off. People have become very wordy.
Yes.
And they want to tell you how they feel, but it takes 10 minutes. And you're there like, get to the point.
Yes.
Get to the point. But I had to learn to don't push people that quickly because sometimes they have to formulate through what's going on in their mind so they can truly get out what they need to get out.
Right. Now let me talk about that. Social isolation and loneliness affected that too. There's a part of our brain which is called the default pathway. When people are isolated and it deals with memories and our processing of memories. When we're isolated, what we tend to do is go back through all of the catalogs of memories, all of the interactions we've had, and process them over and over again. We start to relive our life up to that point. The problem when we do that is...
a dementia person is going...
But the problem when we do that is that you begin to overanalyze everything. Everything becomes, again, magnified. You begin to talk to yourself you begin to draw your self-value, just like you would draw, like if you're interacting with your friends normally, a lot of how you see yourself is because of how you reflected through them.
Right.
But now that you're doing this through this kind of flashback mode that your brain is in, the way you see yourself is changing because you're directing the story. Your self-talk now, and when this person did this to me 2 years ago, I felt this way, and this, so they must have done it for this reason, and they did it for that reason because they saw that. So now,
so you're self-explaining somebody else's emotions to yourself.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
You're creating a whole novel that may never have existed.
You know that saying that idle mind is the devil's workshop?
Oh my gosh.
When our minds are isolated socially, that need to fabricate interactions based on past interactions, filling in that space. Now, because you keep retelling those stories and adding details and adding analysis, it changes how you see yourself. It changes how you see other people and what they mean when they say something or do something. So now that becomes more real to you. So when now that we're starting to connect again, guess what? Those same feelings are there. This is how it changes us socially and our mental well-being. Because now I have a different mental picture of myself.
Also, you create a new mental picture for someone else.
Exactly. Now the way I see myself in many cases, and again, this is not everyone, but this is just what research has shown is the effect of us being isolated and then feeling lonely.
I mean, I believe a lot of us can pick one or two or three things out of what we just said that we've already experienced, you know?
Very true. Very true. But now we see ourselves differently because all of those interactions that have played out, now that we've overanalyzed them, they've added a different value to us. They've added a different aspect to us. We see ourselves differently. When we see ourselves differently, and we think about why we see ourselves that way now everybody else's actions look differently to us. Our actions look different to them. Their motivations take on a different meaning. We add a motivation when there's not one. So this is the purpose of this show today, is to make us aware of these things so that as we start to go back to normal, we can be aware in that higher order prefrontal cortex that I need to be aware of how I interact, what I place value on, how I'm thinking, so that I can restore healthy outlook, healthy interaction, and healthy social relationships, and hopefully move back toward normal. Because just because the world is opening doesn't mean we're normal.
No.
Normal is, and again, normal is, we use that term loosely because no one is quote unquote normal because everybody's unique, but we're not the same. Okay, just because we're together doesn't mean we're the same. If we don't know that, then now this new normal where everything's a powder keg. Everything's an opportunity for conflict. Everything's an assault on our character. Everything is, or I'm not worth as much because I'm analyzing differently.
That's almost like how some of these dictators
were
able to brainwash some of these people.
Yes.
Hitler, the guy that made people drink the poison.
Yes.
All of that stuff.
And if you notice, dictators always isolate their people. You can't leave. You have to stay.
Oh my gosh.
Or they separate them from society and put them in a closed bubble. Well, guess what? The whole world's been that now.
That's scary.
It is scary. It is very scary.
Because in that isolation, a lot of people joined certain groups.
Oh, thank you so much. That's what I was exactly talking about. That's what we talked about earlier. Because we want to feel connected, and we were connecting through online means and social media, we connect with those with the echo chamber. That is our tribe. That is our ideological match.
Yes.
And those places are very, very dangerous because they reinforce what is known as information bias. I'm not looking for the truth. I'm looking for information that confirms what I already believe.
And to me, I don't think it's just like criminal entities.
No.
Even religious entities can be cultish.
That is a great word. Because now I've got you all to myself.
Yeah.
I'm the only voice outside of yours that's dictating to you.
Yeah.
And even, like if we go to church, we talk about what happened in church, and that collective experience is shaped what we take away.
Yes.
Well, now it's just me and the computer screen and what the pastor says. It's just one voice.
Yeah.
So now I don't get that collective sharing to normalize that interaction. Right. So yeah, you're exactly right. We strive to feel connected, but in essence, it just isolates us it makes us isolated with a central voice. Yeah. And that's not healthy.
No.
It's not healthy. So you're exactly right.
Diversity of opinion, diversity of conversation,
yes.
diversity of experience is what we all need.
We all need that. We all need it.
All right, so the last question is, how does these changes affect our mental health?
We talked about that.
We did talk about that.
Yeah. But now we're going to talk about how do we deal with it.
How do we deal with all of this that we've just heard? I know someone has experienced at least one of these things. At least one of these things. So we're going to figure out how do we deal with it. And these are not all of the answers.
No.
But these are just some things that you can put in place for yourself to help you grow back to who you were before.
Very true.
A better version of yourself, actually.
We can say we are back and better than ever.
Yes.
Okay? Right.
So let's go.
First, accept the reality of the situation.
Okay.
When you begin to realize that I don't feel the same about interacting with people, whether it be I don't want to, or every time I do, I feel more, I feel more anxious. I feel more aggressive. I feel more apprehensive.
And people don't want to deal with that.
No.
As soon as they feel that, they draw back in.
And why is that though? Especially now.
Because some of them is scary.
It's scary because for some people, I haven't had near the amount of interaction I want to have. So when I can come up to you and I feel your anxiety or apprehension, again, that magnification, I'm not dealing with you.
Yes.
Whereas other people are like, are you okay? No. They would try to explain it to you.
That's what I did when we went to the bowling alley. I saw a young girl and her face just looked different. Everybody walking right past her.
Right.
And I was like, I paused. I said, are you okay? She was like, I'm fine. I said, are you okay? She said, I'm fine. I'm fine. I said, it's okay. I'm going to watch you. And she didn't even know who I was. I said, but I'm going to watch you and just make sure that you're okay. I'm right over there.
But people are walking by because we don't take cues as well. We're not as sensitive anymore.
Correct.
Or we do see it, but we don't have the emotional energy to deal with it.
I've said that.
Yes.
I've said that. During COVID, I said, I don't have the emotional space to deal with your stuff.
Exactly. Because I've been living in my own head and I fill that space with my own thoughts. This is true. All right. So first, accept the reality of the situation. Don't deny it. Accept the reality, because you can't deal with something that you don't accept. When you have that emotion that seems abnormal, use that higher order center and say, wait, that emotion is real. What do I need to do about it? Because if you don't accept that state of mind, then it just runs away with you. You don't engage that higher order part of you to deal with it.
And I would also add why.
Yes.
Why did I have that emotional response?
Right. Well, that's the next point. Embrace the feeling.
Okay.
Embrace it. And embrace it. And then step 3 is don't add a positive or a negative.
Okay.
Remember we talked about adding a value.
Okay. Now give us an example on that.
If you go to CVS and the cashier is short with you and it makes you upset, accept the reality that I didn't like the way she talked to me.
Okay.
2, I really didn't like that because it made me feel like she has something against me. This step is don't assign the fact, well, if she doesn't like me, then I must not be a good person. Or this is an opportunity for me to go get after somebody. Don't assign that value to it immediately. Because when you do, now you can't deal with the emotion in and of itself. You're dealing with the value or the assigned positive or negative you added to the emotion.
Okay, so you told us what we shouldn't do. What should we do?
Here we go. Feelings can represent how you connect to your environment and signal what actions you should take to make yourself comfortable.
Okay.
When you see it, observe it just as it is.
Okay.
I didn't like that because of the way she talked to me. I don't like the way she talked to me because I don't feel I deserved her to talk to me like that. Why don't I deserve that? Because I'm just as valuable as everybody else. I don't deserve to be talked down to. I didn't say it was a bad feeling or a good feeling. I just said why I felt that way. That was the why.
Okay.
So instead of the positive, is this is good or bad, just why is it there? That's what you want. Okay. Accept that you feel that way, embrace it, deal with it, Then don't assign a bad or a good. Just say, why do I feel this way? Okay? And now,
the next tip,
again, that's mindfulness. Take the time to observe. Spend time during the day observing your state of mind, observing how you feel, observing what's going on internally. Because especially now that the world's starting to open back up, we talk about how busy it feels now because everything's going at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
We're seeking out extra interaction because we've been missing it. If we don't take the time to be mindful and observe our internal environment, we will be feeding so many things into an environment that we ourselves don't understand what's going on in. So you're adding all of these things and craving. Again, we're hungry for it. We're in the grocery store and we're just adding things to our emotional shopping cart, but we're not cognizant of what we are already adding to what's going on inside. The practice of mindfulness is not it's not transcendental meditation. I'm not talking about mysticism and Easter. I'm not talking about that.
No.
Just spending quiet time observing your thoughts. And the practice of mindfulness will teach you when a thought comes. A lot of times people, the hardest part with mindfulness is when the thought comes, we think, oh, my mind's supposed to be clear. No, it's not.
No.
Your mind's not supposed to be clear. And so you've already assigned a negative to that.
And I'm glad you said that the last couple shows, because I've been very aware of that.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about. Don't assign that, oh, I'm supposed to be able to keep my mind clear, and now here's an emotion, so I failed. You've made that experience negative. No, a thought came. Oh, okay, why is that thought there? What about, okay. All right, and then let it go. Don't sit there and ruminate over it. Let it go.
Allow it to flow out.
And let the next thought come. But when you do that, it allows you to observe, just like this picture behind us. That's why this picture is so peaceful. Because if you're in that environment, you're just observing the surrounding.
Yes.
If a bird or something lands in the lake and starts to make waves in it, on that water, you don't say, oh, that lake messed up the picture.
No.
That leaf made ripples in the water and messed it up. You observe the ripples as they go out. Observe your internal environment. Be mindful.
Is it safe to say that now that the world is opening up, we can now build in new habits?
Yes.
Because nothing, basically our slate is clean right now.
Yes.
And we can start putting little things in place that can help us. Is it safe to say that?
That's perfect. And that's exactly why I thought this show was going to be helpful. It's because as we start to rebuild that true social connection and network, that's the show. I think that's the name of the show. Wasn't it The Social Network?
Yes.
That was the name of the movie you're talking about.
Was it Social Network or Social Dilemma?
I don't know. I think it's Social Network.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah. But anyway, I think now that we are moving back that way, implementation is easiest at the beginning. Now, if you get into the middle, now you've got to deal with everything that's there and try to force something into rotation.
Yes.
Doing it now. That's why understanding why we're feeling different, understanding why the world looks and sounds different, understand why I may be reacting or people may be reacting different to me, understanding that, and now putting in this practice of noticing, the tips we're going through right now, putting these things in place is very important. All right. So the next tip, we talk about mindfulness. Focus on the opportunities that you have. Focus on the opportunities that you have.
That's very hard for many people.
Yes, because
some of their situations, and you have to be honest, some of their situations are not opportunistic. It can be they're in very tough situations.
You can be in a tough situation, but there's an opportunity everywhere. The opportunity may not be the one you want.
Okay.
It may not be the one you think you need.
Yes.
But there's an opportunity there. Just like that young man you met in the store.
Oh, it wasn't a young man. It was a middle-aged man. Let him tell you the story.
So Shawnee's in the grocery store yesterday.
Yes.
And this man comes up, says he needs.
No, actually, he said, "Would you be upset?"
Tell the story.
Sorry, he said, "Would you be upset if a man asked a woman for help?" I had on my headphones, so I turned it off, and I said, "No, I wouldn't be upset," because I thought he was gonna say that he wanted to ask for, "Can you help me find this thing for my wife?" or something like that. I said, "Okay, no," and then he said, "I just started a new job, and I won't have no money for 2 weeks, and my children and my wife is at home and they're hungry, and I'm just trying to get them some food." Continue.
So then she looks in his cart and said, "Well, you know what? I'll pay for the things that are in your cart," and he goes, "Well, that's not going to be enough. That's not enough to get me through the week." I'm like, really? But see, so there was an opportunity.
Wait now. After he said that, I didn't just say, okay, and kept moving. I pressed because you said you needed something. And if the Lord sent you to me, the Lord knew I had the means to be able to help whoever he sent to me.
Right.
I was willing to help. So I asked again. I said, I can help you pay for those things that's in there. My cart was half empty because I didn't really go in to buy a bunch of stuff. And I was like, I could pay for those things inside of there. And he was like, no, I was just looking for if I can get different people to help me. And then when he said that, it's like everything just paused. Go ahead, now you can finish it.
But again, that's what we're talking about. When you feel isolated or when you're in those states, look around for opportunities. Because the one thing that stimulates us in a positive way is the opportunity to do something. The opportunity to improve our condition. The opportunity to step forward even if we're in a very bad place. So one of the things we need to do is when you are in these social interactions or we're coming out of these isolated places and we feel, look for the opportunities. Not at what I don't have, not at what's missing, not at what I wish I had. What opportunities do I have in hand?
And I was just thinking all day. Remember I told you that all day? I said, I don't understand that. So my family is hungry and I pushed down my pride to ask some stranger to help me buy food for my family. And they said yes. Even if I had 3 things in the cart, I'd say, let's go.
Right.
Buy the thing, put it in my vehicle, come back and see if I can get someone else to help me. And it almost made me think, did you really need the help?
But again, I'm not saying
the opportunity wasn't what he wanted.
And I can't say this because I don't know the gentleman, but 2.5 years ago, he probably wouldn't have reacted that way.
Yeah.
But when you're in a situation that you don't want to be in, you've been not in those normal social interactions. When people don't interact normally in society, which no one really has because of COVID, you lose the ability to know what normal is.
Yes.
So first of all, him asking was like, I don't know if this is normal for me to ask this lady for help.
Correct. He already
had said
started
that.
with that, yes.
But then the response you gave, he was like, well, I don't know if it's normal for me to deny this. Like his norms were way off.
Yeah.
Well, norms come from our heart.
Obvious.
It comes from our mentality. It comes from the function of our brain. It comes from what we've experienced in the past. Well, when we're isolated, remember we said those past experiences change because we go back and we ruminate over them. So now our norms can be different.
Let me add this last part. He said to me, if I see you on the way out, I can come to you and we'll meet up and you can purchase the rest of this thing. And I said in my mind, you don't even know if you're going to see me again.
Right.
And you're thinking, it felt like an ownership thing started to happen. Very abnormal behavior.
There you go. Very abnormal, very forward, because you haven't had the interaction.
That's correct.
Okay. And the last one is stay connected right now as we open up. Those people that you trust, even though they may be different, because we're all a little different.
That's correct.
Don't shy away from rebuilding, reestablishing, reaffirming connections. Don't shy away from it. We have been isolated so long that some of us, isolation will feel normal. This lack of social interaction is the new norm. But we've already talked about all of these studies that have shown, all of the scientific, they have shown the isolation, the perceived loneliness is damaging to us physically, socially, and mentally. Reaffirm, reestablish connections. Don't expect them to feel exactly the way they did before.
That's correct.
Don't expect them to, there's a new dynamic that you have to work through, but take the opportunity to in good faith, reestablish those connections.
I'm glad you said opportunity because there are some people that's not going to want to build a relationship.
Right.
And there are some people that's not going to want to build that connection.
Right.
And don't feel like there's something wrong with you.
No.
It's
again,
they just
don't assign positive or negative.
No.
Right.
No.
So that we talked about a lot tonight.
Yes, we did.
But the theme of it is, as we get back to gathering, as we get back to what was normal social setting, because of what we've been through, though we won't interact the same at this point.
Yes.
Be aware of that. Be mindful. Embrace those feelings. Don't deny those feelings. Don't assign a positive or a negative. Just say, why am I feeling this way? And then process it. And then reestablish those opportunities to rebuild connections. Yeah. And be at home with what's going on internally.
Yes.
Practice that mindfulness. Mm-hmm. Observe yourself. Allow yourself to be still. Not isolated, but at some points during your day, mentally still, so that you can see yourself. And then consciously work back through all of these things, because the world feels different, because we in the world are different because of what we've been through. Mm-hmm. But we don't have to stay this way. Mm-hmm. We don't have to. This doesn't have to be a new normal. Mm-hmm. If we're aware of it, if we know what's going on, we can take these steps, and you can find tons of sources online. Some people may need a therapist to help them talk through it.
Yeah.
There's so many, because people are isolated, there's so many now telehealth counseling services. Mm-hmm. I heard one that I was listening to that's called faithfulcounseling.com. Mm-hmm. And it's all Christian-based psychologists and counselors. So for our community, if you want a counselor but you don't want somebody that's going to tell you something that may contradict your faith, there has a whole website where you can set up these virtual counseling with someone who shares your faith. Mm-hmm. Faithful. Now, they don't pay us to do this, but I'm saying,
but we're here to help everyone that we can around the world.
Right. So what we want you to do is make sure you're aware that because of the isolation, the perceived loneliness, our brains are working and functioning differently. Mm-hmm. Take the effort, take the time to rebuild and reestablish those normal connections, because it is very important for our physical health, our social health, and definitely for our mental health and well-being. And that's where we are for tonight.
And I can add, the last month or 2 months, I've been taking time every morning, and I have a special place where I go and I sit down and read and talk to the Lord. And I saw a magnanimous, I don't even know if that's a word.
That's a word.
A magnanimous difference in my mental health. Even when I respond to my children when they are wrong, I can see that I slow down and can catch myself before I pop off at the mouth. Am I correct?
This is true.
Yes.
This is true.
And another thing too, all doctors say exercise helps.
Yes.
And I've definitely, Monday through Friday, some of it is 10, 15, 30 minutes, but I do some type of exercise, and I see a world of a difference. And if your exercise is just walking, include that into your daily activity, and you will see a difference.
Right. And even if you're working out and mindfulness don't have to be separate. Let's say if your exercise is walking on a treadmill for 20 minutes.
Have your music on.
And just allow yourself to observe what is going on with you mentally as you work out physically.
Yes.
But just spending that time in what is now known as self-care. Self-care, self-awareness is very important. We want you to be aware that things feel different, we're different, the world is different, but we can get back to a healthy state of mind, a healthy state of interaction, and a healthy state of mental well-being. Yes. So that's our show for tonight. Yes. Thank you. I hope you've been helped. If you have, leave a comment, leave a question.
Please like and subscribe.
Yes, please.
Mainly, I don't usually ask this, but please share this with everyone that you know, because there's somebody out there that this information will help. Yes. So you can be what Pastor Darius saying,
a virtual
evangelist.
Yes.
Where you help us get this message out to all that needs it, because the Lord knows who needs it, and they can help them, get through whatever that they're going through. So please help us share this information.
All right. Well, we will see you guys next month. I think our topic for next month is men's health.
Okay.
Guys, let's go. Next month's our month.
I'm just praying that they create space for men, because y'all need your own doctors.
We're creating. It's coming. It's coming.
I believe that.
But that's our show for tonight. That's our show for this month. So thank you for joining us again here on Healthy and Whole.
Mind, body, and soul.
Y'all be good. We'll see you next week. Next month. Not next week. Next month.
Bye.